Hi everyone, my name is Corey, and for this book report I decided to do it on The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. This book is the first in the Chronicle of Narnia series, and since I knew we were going to be reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is the second book, I wanted to read this one first. And I loved it so much that I wanted to do this report on it to let you know a little bit more about it, and I know that if you read it, you'll love it too. So again, it's The Magician's Nephew, and this genre it's a fantasy novel. So what that entails is that the events occur outside of the ordinary laws that we have in our universe. So everything that happens is different than what we can expect, and which leads to lots of surprises and mystery, and it also includes magic. That's a central key to a fantasy novel. And then the last is that it involves journeys and quests, which there is a lot of in this book particularly. The children can go back and forth between the real world and the fantasy world. This is another key indicator that the book is a fantasy novel, is when you can, this starts in the real world. In this case, they start in London, and then there's a portal which takes them to a fantasy world. There's a few in this book. I won't give it away because I want you all to read it, but we all know that eventually they do end up in Narnia. And so again, there is a portal between worlds, and this is another indicator that your book is a fantasy novel. And so I decided to do this report on this book just because it was so fun, and I've always loved fantasy novels, Harry Potter. It opens up a lot of possibilities. There's no boundaries. The children can explore. There can be talking animals. There can be magic. It just gives you a different perspective on the world. Another is that there are symbols that the author can use to represent complex ideas that otherwise would be harder to convey. For example, in this book, there's a lot of religious symbols that are used that C.S. Lewis wouldn't be able to go in depth in unless he used those symbols, so that we as the reader can take those as we want. And another is that there's a use of magic and supernatural characters or powers to suggest universal truths. And then finally, readers are still able to relate to the fantasy characters and the ideas. I know that even though these children are in this fantasy world, I was still able to relate to them and find different ways that their experiences could help me in my life, even though I live in the real world and not the fantasy world. So again, these are some of the reasons of what I enjoyed about this book. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. I loved the main characters because they were children. For me, in a children's fantasy novel, even though I can read it as an adult, I think for children it's a good thing for them to be able to relate to children as the main characters. I also loved that there was mystery and suspense. Again, there were gospel parallels and religious symbols that were used. I loved the descriptive language that C.S. Lewis uses. It makes it more fun and enjoyable. And I love that there's a cliffhanger ending. It makes you want to keep reading in the series, start the next book right away, and all of these things are really exciting in a children's novel, especially fantasy. And so this is why I enjoyed C.S. Lewis's The Chronicle of Narnia Book 1 The Magician's Nephew, and I know you'll love it too. It would be a really great idea if you would read it before we have to read the second book, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I know that you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Thank you.